is absurd. People are trying to survive right now. And if anything, this is a rally around the flag moment. And this is why the right wing in every single country, including Netanyahu, relies on war in order to consolidate power. It's also happening in Iran right now.
After Israel launched a large-scale surprise attack against Iran, the two countries have entered a dangerous phase of continuous missile fire. Now, inside Iran, millions are living through escalating fear and uncertainty. Across the diaspora, many grapple with what this moment means, while fearing the worst for their loved ones back home. So, today I'm speaking with Hoda Katebi to hear her reflections. She's an Iranian-American writer, community organizer, and lawyer whose work appeared in major American and global publications. We'll talk about what's happening inside Iran today through the lens of her family and loved ones inside the country, not to mention her own reflections about this moment, and her thoughts about what happens when feminism and solidarity only seem to matter when they serve geopolitical interests. Hoda Katebi, thank you so much for coming on Real Talk. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. There's so much to get into, Hoda. Honestly, I don't even know where to start. I guess the first question would be, how are you doing? I know it's a difficult question. I'm sorry. I can see your reaction. It's a difficult question.
You mean before or after the cry break? I had to start before we started this segment.
We don't even have to put it as how are you. We can just, we can just say whatever is on your mind right now. Whatever it is that you want to just let out in this first couple minutes, and then
I think that's a bad idea. It'll be a lot.
Is that a bad idea?
I think we should go on to the next question. I have a lot of choice words that I shouldn't be making publicly at this time.
Okay. Well, I can imagine, or maybe I can't actually, how difficult the last few days have been for you.
It's like if you've had a nightmare from childhood and then it suddenly comes true. That's what the last 4 days have been. I feel like I'm still part of me, a very small part of me is you're just going to wake up and it's not going to be true. But it is true, and we're here, and it is something that we have been warning against, and that has been sort of the beating drums of war have been beating for decades, and it doesn't. It's even worse than we even imagined. I'll put it that way. It's everything. It's catastrophic, horrific, nightmarish, constant. I forget who I am or what I've done or anything that I had to do or before Thursday at 5 p.m., 4 p.m. Pacific time.
And what are you hearing from relatives, loved ones, people back home, just so we can at least get an idea of what it's like to be on the ground in Iran today?
I think that there is a lot of anger. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of mixed emotions. I have family across Iran, primarily in Karaj, Tehran, Mashhad. They're all over the country. I have very close friends who have entire families abroad. I have friends who have parents abroad. And there's at one moment, it feels just so surreal. I've had 4 friends text me almost the same time saying, my sick mother in Tehran refuses to leave and evacuate. And it's the same story. There's a level of stubbornness. There's a level of just pure anger at the fact that Israel had the audacity to surprise attack Iran just days before a potential deal could have been reached on a nuclear program, rage at aspects of the diaspora who are cheering on the bombing in an attempt for them to be able to be part of a next fake manufactured government, anger at other, people who didn't take the war in Gaza seriously, the genocide in Gaza seriously, and now are surprised that it's happening to people that we love here in Iran. So I think there's a lot of anger, a rage. There's so much fear. Every one of my friends who I've spoken to, they don't sleep at all. They haven't slept since Thursday.
Friends over there, you mean?
Yes, friends there, friends here, friends there, everybody.
Sure. No, and
that's
totally
any Iranian
understandable.
who has been getting good sleep. I have all of my friends and family. I've forced them every single morning when you wake up, text me that you're doing well, and that quickly became a ridiculous ask because there's no waking up because they've never slept. They're sending me voice notes with the sounds of attacks and Israeli missiles that you can hear from their window. And these are friends of mine who are, many of them are activists against the Iranian government, are now like hiding from Israeli bombs. Like, this is totally absurd. And any notion of any of the propaganda that is being spewed by the United States, Israel, the United Kingdom, any of these European countries who are allied with Israel, is just can be undercut with just like any sentence that's coming out from any Iranian person on the ground in Iran.
You know, and this whole idea about evacuation, I mean, first we had Israel designate an area of Tehran which had like 300,000 people, or has 300,000 people, I should say. And then the other day, President Trump came out and said, basically said that all of Tehran should be evacuated. Everyone that's in Tehran should evacuate. And that's a city of almost 10 million people. Not to mention the fact that, the Israel has been targeting the energy sector in Iran. So oil and gas is quite scarce at the moment. At the same time, how can a whole city, how can a capital evacuate? What does that even mean to people on the ground? Because this struck me when you said the word people are being stubborn and not wanting to leave. But are there actual places for that many people to leave at once?
Right. No. And it's not just any capital city. The population of Tehran, the city itself, is a little over 9 million. If you include the suburbs, it's close to 15 million people. Like, that's more than the entirety of Israel. And if Netanyahu or even Trump is suggesting that 15 million people can just get up and leave, then, I mean, as a side note, they should have no reservations about the right of return of Palestinians to their homes in Israel, about how could these people go, where could they go in terms of illegal settlements. But that's beside the point. The fact is that 15 million people can't up and leave when there are actual logistical constraints. But on top of that, Israel has been deliberately attacking civilian infrastructure. You mentioned electricity, oil and gas, water. The streets of Tajrish were flooded. My good friend her mother, who is sick, lives in Tajrish, has no car, has no ability to even access the streets. I have friends right now who messaged me that they want to leave. They just don't have a car. Who has a car in Tehran? Especially when the economy has been completely shattered, both by government corruption, as well as these like violent sanctions that the United States has put on Iran that have actually worsened over time, worsened under Trump 1.0, ironically, after he came out of the Iran deal. But there is nowhere to go. And there's a limitation on where 15 million people can go in a country. People don't know where to go, that people don't have money to get them to those places. And many of my friends and family of friends have elderly or sick people in their families that they can't just leave behind. They're too old to get in a car and travel 10 times, the amount of time it'll take to get to Shomal or the north or somewhere that's supposedly safe. But on top of that, I think even the ask, aside from all of that, like the idea that there is safety or there's a safe place is also a complete falsity. There is nowhere safe if you look at Gaza. And if we just know that this is the same genocidal state that is telling Gazans, here is bread, or here is rice, here is flour, and then openly massacres them literally yesterday. Where is safety? You're literally fake giving people aid and then you massacre them for flour. You tell people that you're bombing hospitals and then you find a calendar and you say this is a tool of terrorism. At this point, the fact that Israel has been able to bomb hospitals, bomb civilian infrastructure. I mean, and we can get into the blurred line between what even civilian or military means anymore, but quote unquote civilian infrastructure. And with total impunity, at this point, they're not even coming up with excuses as to why they are bombing hospitals in Kermanshah in Iran. Like, they don't even have to anymore. There's no excuse. They don't even have to manufacture one for the American public or for the Western public because it's done. They can do this now. And every time they push that red line, it changes the game for everybody around the world. This isn't just Gaza, Lebanon, and now Iran, Yemen. This is like a catalysmic moment for the world in what one country can get away with total impunity and like manufactured gibberish language to like to then reframe and gaslight everybody into thinking that this is about something else.
Right. And even the language that we've seen Israel use, very much similar to the language that we've seen being used by the U.S. in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's like they're painting this as an image of like an existential crisis for the West. You know, it's if it's not us, it's you next, or if it is us, then it will be you next. You in the West, you Western countries, you civilized countries, is basically the narrative that the Israeli government is setting out.
Yeah, and can I curse on this show, or is this a no?
Absolutely. Listen,
the fucking audacity. The fucking audacity for
Hoda
Israel.
Katebi is on the show. She just made it. She just arrived.
That anything is an existential threat to them, an illegal settler colonial state, when they are carrying out a genocide, like a actual literal genocide against a people, wiping them, attempting to wipe them off the face of the earth, killing generations of Palestinians. And they want to claim existential threat. That is total bullshit. And I don't understand why these dots haven't been connected, or they are being connected, but you know, it's not being uplifted based on the algorithms that they have control over and Western media.
And the neocons have come out, right? Like the editorials and the op-eds have started coming out the past couple of days. I mean,
yeah, we're all so shocked. We're so wow.
Calling for regime change.
So surprising.
Here's what I'd like to kind of unpack with you, because I think obviously with everything that's going on, it's looking very black and white. It's almost like if you're against what the government is doing, the Iranian government, if you're against the Iranian government, then surely you're supporting what Israel is doing right now, because that is weakening them and it's, you know, almost toppling them in a way. And if you're not, or if you are against what Israel is doing right now, then you're somehow a state propagandist, or at the very least supportive of the Iranian government. And this is, I feel like, the black and white narrative that's been taking place in very simplistic Twitter debates online and other kind of platforms. But I've been seeing it quite a bit, at least in the narrative that's being pushed out in these editorials, in these op-eds.
Absolutely. And it's not even just on Twitter debates online. The same day that Israel bombed, again, civilian infrastructure, which is and journalists, the IRIB, Iran's national media company. And despite our, you know, you can have your reservations about the media company, but like you can't bomb journalists, especially when they're live on air. It's absurd. And two people were killed from that bombing, including just one staffer who just like, you know, last week he was just going to his like job as an intern or working in the back room at a news company. And now he's killed in Israel's strike on, my boss is calling. Yep. I forgot I have a job.
Bringing them on the show.
Probably a good idea. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. And at the same time that Israel is literally taking out infrastructure for Iranian state media, Iran International, a diaspora, right-wing, Pahlavi peddling, Saudi-funded media, quote-unquote media outlet with quote-unquote journalists, hosts Netanyahu himself to speak directly to Iranian people. This is strategic. There's
what does this tell you? What does this mean? If we can kind of just highlight that.
This is absolutely this is like Netanyahu's, this was my nightmare as a kid. This is Netanyahu's dreams since he was a kid. This is his idea of actual complete regime change in Iran, one that is top down, toppling any sort of democracy, care for women, even though he constantly says Zan Zindagi Azadi, which is just infuriating and makes my ears bleed. He wants to install another puppet regime in Iran, as the United States did in 1953 with a coup, toppling a democratically elected prime minister and installing a puppet king, whose now relatives are in LA claiming that he still has the right to the throne, this billionaire elderly man who has no connection to reality on the ground is like, is trying, and with Netanyahu trying to restore some empire in Iran that the Iranian people have rightfully so toppled again and again. So this is absolutely like about more than just.
Do you think he has support on the ground, Hoda? Because each time Israel has some sort of confrontation with Iran over the last few years, we've seen Pahlavi come up on our screens, right? And I think what people don't understand is what is the status of someone like that inside Iran.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. Iranians are a monolith. There are people who support him. There are people who despise him, as there are every single type of people everywhere in the world. To say that nobody domestically in Iran supports Pahlavi would be dishonest. Now, is starting a war with Iran, not a war, sorry, a unilateral attack on Iran, and having sort of strikes that are killing people and destroying hospitals and civilian infrastructure and putting everybody, all of these Iranians, in a state of panic and fear and terror. If for a moment anybody thinks that that actually creates a condition for a democratic people's movement uprising, for people in Iran to feel safe, open, and that they can rise up against their government and install something in their name and something that they love that represents them, is absurd. People are trying to survive right now. And if anything, this is a rally around the flag moment. And this is why the right wing in every single country, including Netanyahu, relies on war in order to consolidate power. It's also happening in Iran right now. With every sanction that's added on Iran, every sort of existential threat literally crumbles the ability for people in Iran to be able to actually rise up and commit themselves to some sort of ground up shift in the status quo, in a people's revolution. And what is ironic is that so many people who, including myself, who are vehemently against the Iranian government, everybody who I know in Iran, in this moment are also putting out statements and talking about, we need to end the war. Like, who's going to rise up if Iranians are killed? Who's left? Pahlavi wants to come and rule over rubble. Like, what's the outcome of this? But the second part of that also is that, say that happens, right? Say that in some absurd fictional world, people in Iran rise up, overthrow this government. Their sovereignty has been, and I'm a leftist. I'm not a huge believer in sovereignty and borders and etc. But if we're thinking about this from like a strictly like international nation state perspective, Israel is proving to the world that no country has sovereignty if it declares it so. And there is nothing stopping, say that this government, this new people's government of Iran, also is not a fan of what's happening in Gaza. Why would Israel not come and do the exact same thing again? Like, there is no world in which this is going to help the Iranian people, and you can't bomb people into a revolution.
And what are people missing, do you feel, those who aren't in Iran or those who aren't even from the region, when it comes to the statement of, you can't bomb people into a democracy, basically? Like, why is that not, it still feels like this idea of you bombing a country in the Middle East will somehow lead to a better future for the people of that country.
Right. That's so 2001. Like, how is this the same language? I mean, but it's to be expected, is because people are not willing to connect the dots. And I also think when push comes to shove, I think people are in shock, and people there's so much to process in this moment. And I hate that those of us who have family in Iran that just want to be able to constantly check up on family and friends have to also constantly be analyzing and regurgitating the same things that are basic, that Palestinians have said, Lebanese people have said, Iraqi people have said, Afghan people have said, Yemeni, it's the same thing. Like, we're not actually saying anything new, but we have to say it, and we just replace the words with Iran instead of being able to talk to our family at home, because there's a whole military, there are people who benefit from this. There are people who have monetary, economic benefits when the United States has to create more F-35s for Israel, when the United States has to invest more money into its military industrial complex. Same in Israel. Netanyahu's entire existence as prime minister was on the line just days before he attacked Iran in the surprise, unprovoked attack. And there are people who are gaining from this, and they have power, access, money, and then just pour that into shifting the entire narrative to be able to then justify, and people will eat things up. I think that there is a level of outrage now that I hope can continue, but I also think that it's scary that in 20 plus months of a genocide, we have to say the same things. Like, it's 20 months of a genocide, right, and we're here. We're still here. We're still seeing massacres.
Something isn't sticking.
Yeah, it's not that it's not just sticking. It's that people are, and I don't want to generalize, but like, I don't know if 20 months of a genocide in Gaza hasn't crossed your red line for like people in the United States or people in Europe, etc., to wake up and realize that, like, as a tech worker, your work is actually contributing to this. As a staffer at the State Department, your work is contributing to this. If these aren't red lines for you by now, I don't know what will be a red line. Like, I think you've already chosen your side.
Hoda, I'm gonna ask you about the women life freedom movement that you were involved, or that you were outspoken with, you were writing about from a few years back. But before we even get to that, I do want to ask about how you're seeing the levels of solidarity with Iran right now in terms of calling for stopping the bombing, stopping the killing of civilians, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Do you mean external solidarity with Iran, or domestic, internal within Iran?
I mean international. Because it's because with the women life freedom movement, we've seen global solidarity, right? So I'm gonna juxtapose it in a second. You see what I'm doing? Yeah.
I see what you're doing. Yes. I got your point. I will not talk about it. 100%. A lot of these bullshitting white imperialist peddling people who claimed to want to support Zan-Zindagi Azadi because it was about liberating Muslim Iranians from the hijab actually don't give two shits about stopping bombs from dropping on those same women's heads. There's a huge discrepancy, and obviously this was coming because even this rhetoric, this like the chant of war drums, were also being sort of cultivated during the Zan-Zindagi Azadi protest. Again, the same sort of forces in diaspora, including the Pahlavis, Masih Nejads, etc., people who are funded by Israel, the United States, Saudi, the UK, have also coalesced and tried to, from abroad, co-opt this like domestic, organic people's movement that was happening in Iran, and even try in that moment to say, yeah, we believe in Zan-Zindagi. I mean, Netanyahu himself said Zan-Zindagi Azadi, and I'm sure that slogan was written on the first missiles that hit Iran that killed the first victim of Israel's attack, which was a young girl who was killed. So this is it's absurd, and also so on track. It totally tracks. It's exactly what is expected. They tried it in 2022 and failed, and now they are trying to re-hearken. Like, remember back in 2022 when you guys hated the government? That doesn't change. But obviously, when survival is at stake, you will always prioritize removing an existential threat of bombs on your head, and then you can turn toward domestic politics. Those two are actually very interlinked. And there have been, I think that there is, though, like, clear solidarity that has been consistent throughout that period. One of the first people outside of Iranians that reached out to me when Israel started attacking Iran were Palestinians. Always. They were always been the first people who have reached out to me, and I'm sure many of my Iranian friends can also relate to this, that they were supporting throughout the Zan-Zindagi movement, and they're supporting now because they recognize they recognize it. They recognize that a people's movement uprising is different than a top-down bombardment. And the same people who were beating the war drums during that movement, which I think got a little bit of traction because there was just so much hype and emotion that the right wing really tried to sort of capture and shift to the right. is trying to happen now, but it's not catching within people in Iran. And it is absurd to think that people in Iran right now in mass are going to say, yeah, you know what? Like, even though Israel's dropping bombs on my head, I'm going to risk everything to like revolt against the government right now. Like, it's a preposterous like presumption.
It's preposterous. You say it's preposterous, but this is exactly what I wanted to kind of unpack and make sure that it's clear. The idea that you can be against the government in Iran, but at the same time, completely against the bombing of the country.
Isn't that sad that you have to say that out loud?
It is very sad. It is very,
like
very sad.
And you have to say you can hate two people at the same time. Like it's infuriating, and I think a lot of people know that, but there is such an emotional, like this is exactly how the far right historically has gotten a lot of their gotten their way, has shifted public dialogue. We saw it in 2001. We see it, just throughout time, October 7th, etc. Logic sort of falls flat when there's an emotional reaction that the right can commodify and use to then direct toward this like other angry, like, let's just, like, let's go after them, let's kill them, right? Like that type of like raw anger is misdirected and redirected by war hawks at all the time. Like this is what they do. This is the right moment for war hawks to capture emotion and direct it, capture helplessness and direct it. And I think that's why it's so imperative that, like, and I say this as like having cried 5 minutes before I'm saying this right now, where you got to watch me do that before I went off camera. But like, we have to be very, very, very steadfast and vigilant as people right now, that we are not allowing our emotions to be manipulated and redirected toward war and genocide, and that we have to understand that the red line is either you are a vatan furush, or to English like a traitor, or you are anti-war. Like that is the line. That's the line right now, and we're drawing that in the sand. It's not. It's full stop, right? There's no there's no commas. There's no anything. It's you are either selling out 80, 90 million people who live in your homeland, or you're against the war. And that's the black and white that I want to make clear. And that's the black and white that we should be fighting. If people want a black and white, take that. That there should not be any more nuance in terms of what the position is in this exact moment. Tomorrow, we don't know what it looks like, but in this moment where there's a possibility, I mean, the United States is already involved, but tremendous, like visible U.S. Continuous support, I should say. This is what's on the line right now. That's the red line. And I think if we allow ourselves to just dwell in misery and just sit and cry, which I have done, or just scream, which I have done, that doesn't allow us to just be level-headed, take a breath and say, I can't wait for other people to fix this. Like, this is on me. This is on every single one of us. We have to take a deep breath, figure out what needs to get done, and then start doing it. Find your people and then start doing it.
I was going to read you an excerpt that John Bolton wrote in the Wall Street Journal, but I'm not going to put you through this. I'm not going to put you through this. I'm going to put you through something else. I can probably
read it for you based on a guess of what you would say.
No, just to go back to the women life freedom movement. Like I said, you were someone who, when it was happening, you were so outspoken. You were on different American channels. You were writing about it in American outlets. I bring this up because, yesterday I go on to X and Laura Loomer, of all people, says every American woman should be rooting for the women of Iran to get their freedom by overthrowing the Iranian regime. So,
do you want a reaction to that?
Between everything that you've written and talked about for that movement as an Iranian-American woman, and Laura Loomer saying this, that, this is the route for every American woman, how do you react?
Okay, I have to take out my immediate reaction out of my head, because that would not be PG, and then, or even PG-13, since we're cursing now, we've raised the bar.
We can push it.
I think what choice words will I not be using for Miss Luma? I think if she would like to support Iranian women on the ground in an uprising against Iran, I invite her personally to go to Iran, in Tehran, actually, because fuck evacuation. Go to Tehran right now and gather all the women you can find and see what you can do. That if you want to do that, I encourage you personally. I invite you to Iran to go ahead and try that.
You know,
And if she makes it out alive, good for her.
I know that I'm obviously making light of it, but the point that I'm trying to drive home with you, I mean, making light of it, a lot of it is quite comical in terms of the messaging, but back to what the point that I wanted to drive home is this idea of a difference between a grassroots women-led movement inside Iran versus the idea of bringing in change through foreign actors. And I think that's what's being missed in the conversation right now. Is that there is a clear, strong difference between these two things.
Not only just a difference, but they are wholly and totally mutually exclusive from each other. They can't happen at the same time. That is such a fiction. That's just an impossibility that doesn't even exist. Like, where in the history of the world, and I think Kaveh Akbar even had an Instagram post about this, like, what Israeli bombs have ever freed anybody, right? Like, it is just absurd to think that the same country, the same fictional state that has been carrying out a genocide for 20 plus months has any shred of an ounce of care about what happens to individual people within Iran. And he's already shown that. He's already been killing Iranian civilians. He's been bombing and destroying hospitals, civilian infrastructure. He's making everybody's life miserable, and then comes out and says, Zan Zindagi Azadi. Not only is doing this like so mutually exclusive, the thing that is so dangerous that people don't understand is that this Netanyahu saying Zan Zindagi Azadi is more undermining to the actual domestic people's movement in Iran, because it totally validates the Iranian government's excuse for, in 2022, killing protesters because they were so-called spies of the Israeli government, US spies, foreign-backed infiltrators who are trying to start a movement against the Iranian government. Israel is literally taking that talking point and making it real for them right now. So if we actually have any ounce or shred of care about what happens to people of Iran, we not only do we have to recognize the exclusivity of bombing people versus a bottom-up people's movement, but like, what happens next? Say that, in some like world, there's some like truce, there's some stopping of the attack. This has already given so much credence to the Iranian government to now say, you said that we were like coming up with fake excuses to shoot people. Now what? Now you've seen firsthand that we really do have foreign spies right here in our country trying to undermine this government. This is what Israel has done in the last 3-4 days, has undermined the entire Zan Zindagi Azadi movement of Iran in 2022.
I find that very interesting, Hoda, because you've made, I believe, a similar argument a couple years ago about sanctions against Iran and what that drives the government to do, because the ones who feel it the most are the most marginalized in society, including women.
100%. Yes. Sanctions are, and I think that also goes back to like Trump's outlandish comments that the United States is not involved, or he's not really denying it anymore in his like angry, emotional, like crybaby rants on Truth Social. It's like his like staff that's saying, actually we're really not involved. But it's obnoxious because the United States has been at war or has had a unilateral aggression of violence toward Iran for the 40 plus years because of sanctions. And sanctions are an invisible type of extreme destruction of Iranians' lives and livelihoods in Iran. And we've been seeing this throughout the entirety since 1979. And there are really no conditions to lifting those sanctions. That's what is so absurd, is that and I don't want to jump all over the place, but since this is about nuclear weapons for once, in 2015, Iran and the United States had already signed a JCPOA, an Iran deal, where the conditions for Iran Iran had to do their part, and America would then lift sanctions.
Yeah.
Trump, in his first term, ripped up the Iran deal and then added maximum pressure sanctions. What are those sanctions for? Iran already complied with every single one of its requirements under the JCPOA. So what are the sanctions for, if not to just destroy the Iranian people from within? The goal of sanctions, which has been stated multiple times by Americans within the government, and if we just look at the history of Iraq, is also plainly clear. The goal of sanctions is to make life so fucking miserable in Iran that people are so distressed that they start an uprising against the Iranian government, right? But again, you don't need foreign intervention when the Iranian government itself has made itself the worst enemy of the Iranian people. Like, there is enough anger there that existential threats from the outside make a people's movement impossible. And now when people are struggling to be able to care for their parents who have cancer, which one of my friends, her mother has cancer right now in Tehran, is unable to evacuate. And she's unable to treat her cancer because of sanctions. And how is her mother in a place to join the Zanzandigi uprisings in the street? Like, it's insane that the idea that sanctions actually hurts the Iranian government. If anything, it has historically shown, and so many people have written about this, it's not new, that the government always gets stronger with these types of sanctions. The government is able to then sort of, and it has been doing over the past 4 decades, increasing its privatization through specific individuals that are connected to the government, have their kind of private wealth that is increasing by through this like very neoliberal policy that has been enacted in Iran over the past 4 decades, and also control the borders, which the black market needs, in order to get things in and out of Iran for survival. So the Iranian government actually gets stronger, and the people are sort of left always. The people of Iran are always stuck between a rock and a hard place. For example, the 2022 Zanzandegi Azadi protests, I think, were a perfect example of how damaging these sanctions were for Iranian people, because when there is no contact, when the United States has forced all these countries to sever contact with Iran, the Iranian government can then switch on and off communications with just a switch. Iran is able to sort of become a more isolated state and therefore have more exclusive hegemonic power over its people when they're not, everything has to come from the Iranian government, and the Iranian government can just flip a switch and turn off people's ability to talk to each other. And that's the result of U.S. sanctions. And so that this now times a trillion if we look at bombs being dropped on people's heads.
And also, I'm sure that because of the sanctions, you're unable to basically send money to relatives or family.
Yes. And so many people have been messaging me when I'm saying, people and loved ones in Iran can't move out of Tehran despite all of these evacuation orders because they have no money. They don't have a car. What are they supposed to do? They have no money for housing or gas to even get them if they can even withstand like the 10-hour gas lines right now. They have no money to get them anywhere. And so many people have been messaging, I can send money. How? You can't send money because there are sanctions, because there's no way to actually be able to support monetarily the people of Iran. So going back to that, the Miss Loomis, who was tweeting about wanting to help Iranian women, if you lift sanctions, you can fund them, fund their revolution if you want, but you can't do that. You can't even create ways to help Iranian women on the ground or Iranian people by being able to send funds to be able to help them, quote unquote, evacuate.
A term that I've been seeing quite a bit being used in this context on social media recently is, I guess, imperialist feminist or imperialist feminism. Maybe you've come across it. I guess the idea behind it is that you can be very selective when it comes to the idea of supporting women and supporting feminists and women's rights, especially when it aligns with certain geopolitical aspects and interests. And also the same way you can also be silent on what's happening to people, Palestinians in Gaza, when they're being killed. So I don't know. Did you come across this? What do you think of this whole thing about imperialist feminism?
You really like asking questions that make me angry, huh?
Listen, I'm trying to hit the peak, and then I'll slowly climb down. I will slowly go down.
Toying with my emotions like this. No, I've never heard of the term imperialist feminist. Yes, I mean, this was all the rage during the Zindagi Azadi protests, and I think the contradiction is just made abundantly like dumb clear right now when the same people who are saying we support Iranian women are cheering the bombing of Iranian women. And I think any person right now who is saying, even people who are saying Zindagi Azadi, but weren't actually like can't articulate what that means, I think shows like the surface level nature of the catastrophe that we're seeing right now, these same people cheering on the bombing. And so, yeah, the irony is disgusting. I don't know. Did you want a more thoughtful analysis?
I just want you to talk. No, I think, yeah, no, it makes sense what you're saying. This idea of invoking women's liberation through bombing, which is what we've been kind of talking about.
You said it better than me. Thank you.
No. But yeah, I think after all that we just discussed, I mean, and I know this is hard, but where are you finding yourself in the midst of all of this? I mean, are you glued to the TV? Are you glued to the headlines? Are you constantly on the phone with friends and family? I mean, where's Hoda right now?
Hoda is losing her mind. Yes, to all of the above. I mean, I just literally texted my boss, I'll talk to you later during this. So that gives you an idea of where I'm at with my life that does not involve Iran in this moment. Yeah, I think it's scary because I think during the Zindagi Azadi protests, I developed some health problems, including carpal tunnel, through that period of both stress and like physical, whatever happens when you're extremely stressed. I'm worried that many of us right now are, if we don't take care of ourselves in this moment for the sustainability of what is happening, I think also are going to be suffering the consequences. So I think it's hard to do anything except check your phone, call people. But I think that in this moment, I'm realizing that so many of our community are need a direction for what needs to happen. And so I do, again, want to urge Iranians who are maybe being politicized for the first time or, are really shaken in this moment, that this is only going to, like, the situation is only going to change if we change it. Like there is, I mean, even if whatever is in or outside of our hands is irrelevant at this point, I think that it is important that many Iranians join protests for Palestine, connect with Arab journalists, Arab scholars who have already been doing this work, who have already been creating infrastructures of ways to resist Zionist imperialism and Zionist ties to the United States. There are so many ongoing campaigns that are happening across this country and across Europe. And so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is, believe it or not, a lot of people who hate Zionism and find it an existential threat. Zionism, the ideology that requires the extinguishment of Palestinians, an existential threat to our people, as we are seeing in Gaza and around the Middle East, that there are so many places to enter. But I think what is so important is that something has to get done right now. And so I keep telling myself that. I keep like going into like fits of crying and then being like, okay, I need to write right now. I need to call up every single Iranian person I know to do XYZ. I need to be doing this. And I think that that's really important, is that we have to, again, be vigilant about directing ourselves toward action.
You don't want to be stuck in doom scrolling, basically.
It's very hard not to, but check on your family and then do something.
Yeah.
In the United States and like Black liberation movements, the saying is, "We keep us safe," and I think that just feels so applicable here. Is that the people of Iran are resilient, are astute, are powerful, and are expressing their deep solidarity with their Arab, Black, and brown neighbors. And I think that that is the most critical, vital form of resistance. And there's a, and I think is the most important, part of how we move forward.
Who are you mentioned earlier that you have friends and relatives, but who are the family members that you have in Iran right now?
Everyone in my family, minus my immediate family and one uncle.
So like aunts and cousins and uncles.
Cousins, kids of cousins.
Right.
Who else is family? Yeah, I mean.
And you're in constant communication with them right now.
I am,
as much as
to
you
the
can.
extent possible. So one of the, I've mentioned this on my Instagram, but one of the telecommunications towers were destroyed in Karaj, where a lot of my aunts live. And so I lost for a period of time direct contact with one of my aunts because she didn't have Wi-Fi anymore and she wasn't able to contact us. She had to go to the house of another aunt who then would text us that she's okay. So the fact that this was happening, day 2, was just insane and infuriating, that already the connection is being severed. Already communication is being targeted, which, Israel is unable to withstand the truth. And so there's a clear reason why they kill journalists in Palestine, they destroy communications towers, they have a total media blackout and control of what comes out of Israel, and as a result of Iran's retaliation. And I think that is it, and that's part of one of the most devastating, I think, human parts of this, is to be on one end of just a communication blackout that is deliberate.
Is there like a message that you've gotten or a voice note or something that you're still kind of grappling with, that you're unable to get out of your head? And I'm by no means trying to be dismissive of the whole situation. I'm definitely not. But I just want to see if there's anything that was told to you, said to you, that made you, feel a certain way, or is kind of just sticking with you and you can't get it out of your head.
Everything
Sure.
coming out of right now,
Sure.
Every text, every call, every voice note has stuck with me, and I feel like is like vertebrates. What is the term? Like vibrates?
Reverberate?
Reverberates. Yep, that one, through my body, and it's visceral. Like everything feels so visceral, and I know so many other people in Iran and in diaspora feel this way too. There's shock, and it's just constant. Like, like my dad told me that he can't. He's already stopped watching the news because he feels like his heart is going to implode, and Iranians are poetic, but he wants to just hold his heart in his hands because he's afraid of it imploding. And I think that is the sentiment of so many of us right now, of watching this, and especially off of the back of 20 plus months of genocide. And
what are you saying to them?
To who?
To your loved ones when you're messaging back?
You don't know what to say. I don't know. I mean, what do you tell somebody who says, "Oh, actually, I can't leave Tehran because my mom is aging and she can barely go up and down the stairs"? What are you supposed to say? Tell me. I'd love advice.
No, I don't have. If you're asking me, I don't have the answer.
No one does. It's insane.
Yeah.
This shouldn't be happening. Humans should not be
Absolutely.
experiencing this. This is not something that human bodies are. Have even been like, I don't know how we have been witnessing 20 plus months of genocide and now have to also experience this. Human bodies aren't that strong. I don't know, it's devastating.
I'm trying to see how I can word this part, but how are you reacting to the news coverage in the US, since that's where you are right now?
For my own sanity, I do not watch US news. I haven't watched US media. I haven't read mainstream US publications, but I can tell you exactly what is being said. I think instead, in lieu of that, I would rather focus my time on hearing what's coming out of Iran, translating that putting that out there, writing and being able to actually push out an alternative. And I think this is an absolute ask of every Iranian who can write to be writing right now. And the media is not just like greasing the wheels of the war machine. They are part and parcel of the war machine and have been complicit in genocide and can be complicit in and are complicit in the lives of everybody who has been lost so far in Iran. And this is not something that we should be taking lightly or even for granted that this is just going to happen. We saw this before with Iraq. We saw this before with Iran, the previous attempts at trying to start a war with Iran or an attack on Iran. And I think it is so integral. We have so many brilliant scholars, and I hope all of them start putting pen to paper and writing and being able to counteract and undercut this like Orientalist, imperialist, like white supremacist Zionist bullshit and be able to actually put forth like, what are you seeing in Iran? Translate that. Like we have to uplift the voices about what people in Iran are actually experiencing and not talking over or just like talking at, but like this is our like moral imperative obligation right now.
And I also think about the simplistic coverage of things without context or out of context. Like what you mentioned Afghanistan and we're talking about Iran, like the whole thing with the before and after photos, right? This is what Afghanistan used to look like decades ago. This is what Iran used to look like before 1979, which actually happened to you on air, like 6-7 years ago.
Back.
Yeah, given
that's why this isn't live, by the way. I understand. I get it. You're afraid.
What did I tell you? I'm going up the peak. I'm coming down slowly. But yeah, like it did happen to you on air. But just going back to the point again, just these kind of simplistic takes that have become quite prevalent actually the last, decade or so.
Yep, and you've spoken to Asal Rad, who also I think did a
yes, I have.
Episode with you that I think is so important, and she talks so beautifully on that. So I don't have much to add. I just encourage people to go watch that episode. But I also want to say that like I assume 90% of those, if not 95 or even 99% of the people who are writing right now don't speak a word of Farsi. They probably see Arabic and thinks it's Farsi. They're the ones who like will hear gibberish in like the propaganda Israeli films about Iran and be like, oh, that Farsi was crazy, and it's just like gibberish. Like those are the people who are writing about bombing Iran right now. And to think that people who have no contact with anybody on the ground somehow have the best interests of people in Iran. Of course, they're going to make everything black and white because that's what they have been spoon feeding the public. Because they think people are dumb and they want black and white. They want good and bad. That's the world that they've created. Netanyahu was speaking on Iran International. This is about civilization and savagery, which is like colonial era language. This is the world of dichotomies that the media feels like people are so stupid that this is what they have to get, right? But like, we're not dumb and people aren't stupid and they shouldn't allow themselves to reduce the world into black and white, that you either hate the Iranian government or you support it, and you hate the Iranian government and you like want it to be bombed, or you like you're a regime apologist, right? Actually, I don't know if I did that dichotomy, but you know what I'm trying to say. So I think it's just maddening, and I think it feasts on this like this simplistic idea that people are dumb, and I think it's infantilizing. And I think it's all the more why each one of us have an obligation to cut through that bullshit, call it out when we see it. Like writing letters to the editor, calling in, pushing back on this. Like this isn't okay that that everybody in these like big traditional media thinks that people are so idiotic that they have to reduce the world into black and white, which helps their simplistic narrative. Ironically, it also helps the Iranian government simplistic narrative. This is the exact same thing. Both the Iranian government and the United States are actually saying the exact same thing. They just replace the words when they say it. And so it is, it's just infuriating to think that like, setting up a world of like civilization versus savagery is going to like somehow help with liberation or help with, whatever excuse they're saying for bombing Iran right now. Uranium, I don't know.
Look, I have one more question for you because I know you got to get back to work, right? But
Oh, I'm taking the week off.
As you should, as you should,
Inshallah.
as you should, Hoda. My last question for you is I guess your message that you'd like to get out. The idea, the take that you'd like for people to go home with, and also for anyone who might feel like they want to support in any ways or stand on, take a particular stand, but are unsure how in terms of like all of the fog in terms of the media coverage and whatnot, and not really sure what to say or where to go or what to think. Just your last words in that case.
Everyone can do everything in this moment. I think nothing's off the table, and I think that is, and what's important, and I know I've mentioned this, but like the wheels don't have to be rebuilt right now. Palestinians particularly have created so much infrastructure for organizing against Zionist hegemony and Zionist ideology, and the violent links between the United States and the Zionist regime. And I think that is an easy way to plug in if it's just you. If it's not just you, find your friends and then plug in. I think that there's a number of ways that people can get involved depending on what they do, what they feel comfortable doing, what their skill sets are. People can write if they can write. If you're a tech worker, work with your like fellow Arab tech workers who feel the same way. And especially if you're at these big companies that directly support Israeli occupation and weapons manufacturing, figure something out, man. This is on y'all too. Like, this is so important for tech workers right now to be able to be collaborating about resisting U.S. tech companies' complicity in Israeli genocide and the bombing of our own people. Like, this is a baseline ask for tech workers. Like, there's so much that I think, people can be pouring into right now. DM me if you don't know what to do. I will give you a direction. But
you're asking people to DM you.
Yes, 100%. If you don't know anything what to do,
you're ready to open that door, huh?
I mean, that door has never been closed. Do I read all of them? Sometimes. But I think that people should actually figure out who your people are and look outside of the Iranian community, and figure out what you can do. And I think that happens once you're in conversations, and it doesn't happen if you're just doom scrolling on your phone.
Hoda Katebi, listen, I can't thank you enough for taking the time during this incredibly serious moment. I wish you peace of mind. I wish your family safety. And I wish, for things to turn out in the best way possible. And thanks again for taking the time, Hoda.
Thank you for having me and stuff.
Absolutely.
And making me angry. Thanks for getting me riled up.
Listen.
Me cry before we even started.
Yeah, they don't know that. They haven't seen that. They haven't seen that part. They just
went off camera.
Yes.